I'd like to welcome all of you back to Living Beyond Breast Cancer's annual Thriving Together Conference on Metastatic Breast Cancer. You've joined us today for our afternoon keynote session, Learning from Others, a panel discussion. My name is Janine Guillemino, and I'm Senior Director of Programs and Partnerships at Living Beyond Breast Cancer. And I'm so pleased to be with all of you today, and I'd like you to join me in giving a warm welcome to our online web streaming audience. Thank you. Even though you're not with us in Philadelphia, we're excited to bring a little bit of Philly to you. So for those in the room, just a couple reminders. After the session, I hope you'll stay with us so we can call the drawing winners, and we'll end our day with an evening reception. So as you know, we do many programs at Living Beyond Breast Cancer throughout the year, and we're very proud of the education and support we provide at this one. And this session, which I've had the pleasure of facilitating the last couple of years, is one of the most important because it's an opportunity for you to hear from other people who understand what you're going through, from what I call the real experts, which are other people with metastatic breast cancer. So one of the reasons we're doing this as a keynote session today is because you filled out your evaluations in the past and told us you wanted this as a keynote. So that's a plug for you to fill out your evaluations after the program, because we do listen to them. Since we're a large group today, we're going to be taking all questions via text, and we'll show a slide throughout the talk with that number. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Pamela Ginsburg, and she's going to serve as our moderator today. Dr. Ginsburg is a psychologist specializing in women's issues. She works with women with cancer and other health challenges on issues such as life balance, grief and bereavement, stress management, decision-making, parenting, and relationships. With nearly 25 years of experience, Dr. Ginsburg helps people take control of their lives by making clear decisions, making and implementing action plans, and taking responsibility for their life decisions. Dr. Ginsburg takes a practical, interactive, and solutions-based approach, and she's used a mindfulness-based cognitive approach focusing on the present and the future rather than the past to help facilitate meaningful change. So please welcome Dr. Ginsburg.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy specifically to be facilitating this particular discussion. I myself run a metastatic breast cancer support group. My ladies are over there. And so I know from running this group for many years what kind of support women are able to give to other women. I mean, that is where the information is. That's where people really learn to bond with each other, rely on each other. And you can tell just from the energy in the room how important it is to have women talking to other women or patients talking to other patients, because you learn so much from each other, and you also just get that sense of, these are my people, this is my tribe, we understand each other. So you guys are a great, powerful source of information. So the power is in the room, for sure. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to be asking some questions of our panelists, and our panelists are going to respond. And what I'd like to start with is just having our panelists introduce themselves to you. So, Lana, would you like to start?
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lana Dunn. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas, and I am a metastatic breast cancer thriver. I was initially diagnosed with breast cancer in 2013. I was diagnosed with triple negative. I went through treatment, bilateral mastectomy, radiation, and I thought I was done. And almost 1 year to the date of my last chemo, it metastasized to my lungs and liver. When it metastasized to my lungs and liver, it turned into HER2 positive. So I had treatment for that. Then this past summer, it metastasized to my L5 spine, and it turned into HER2 negative. I have a clone cell, so I am both HER2 positive and HER2 negative. And I am grateful to be on this panel to be able to share my story and my experience with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Jody?
My name is Jody Schmidt, and I am from Northern Kentucky. People keep asking me if I'm near Louisville or Lexington. No, I'm actually near Cincinnati, where we have the wonderful little hippo Fiona. If you're not aware of her, you need to go online because she's the cutest little thing on the world. I was an oncology social worker, believe it or not. I stopped being an oncology social worker and took a job at a different hospital as a telemetry social worker on a heart floor, and was diagnosed 3 weeks later in March of 2013 with invasive ductal carcinoma, stage 3. My oncologist was the greatest, cutest cheerleader, and he's like, it's an aggressive cancer, but we got it. Don't worry, we can do this. We'll get your life right back to normal. I did the 8 weeks of the nasty red devil. I did 20 weeks of another chemo, a couple others. We did radiation. We did a bilateral mastectomy. When they did a CT scan in October of that year, there was a spot on my sternum, followed by a mess of spots. I have numerous spots with compression fractures in my spine. I've had a couple hip fractures, which is why I've had to give up dancing, which I really couldn't do before anyway. But, I am just, it's one of those things where I am aggravated with the whole medical community in some respects of, it's no big deal, we've got it, and then they're like, oops, sorry, and then you disappear. So I am really happy to talk to you today and hope just to get everybody powered up to go after your doctors and your nurses, and let's kick some butt.
Thank you. Laurenita?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laurenita Lucas, and I was diagnosed in October of 2014. I wasn't feeling that well on that Saturday. I thought I had a tummy ache, so I taught a yoga class, I taught a cycle class. Then I threw up, so I went to the doctor. I went to the hospital because it was Saturday, and from that point on I was diagnosed. It escalated until I found out while I was in the hospital that I had stage 4 cancer that metastasized to my liver and my bones. I was in the hospital for a total of 6 weeks, and other than the breast cancer, that was really like an amazing time. It was a lot of fun, a lot of friends, a lot of visitors. Unfortunately, it included things like ports and all these bad medicines and everything, but it just started me on my new life, so to speak. And my company name is Everyday Work on Wellness. So I was a wellness consultant before this. So it's either Everyday Work on Wellness, meaning we could do something to improve our health outcomes every day, or wouldn't you like a little bit more wow in your life every day? So I try to live my life through that. I've learned some lessons along the way. I'm not going to say it's because of breast cancer. I refuse to give breast cancer any credit for anything. Total disclosure, as a Christian, there's a verse that talks about being thankful in all things or grateful in all things. So I'm very grateful for many things in my life. I am not thankful for cancer. So it's like a balance. And like I said, my life dealt with wellness. So now a lot of my conversations have to do with breast cancer. And I just love to share and encourage people and see how people can realize that something that you think is not a thing is really a thing, but we've got to talk about it and be open so we could just continue to live and thrive. So it's a pleasure to be with you all today.
Thank you. And finally, Sandra.
Hi, I want to commend all of you for being here. If I was sitting in your chair, I actually wouldn't be. I'd probably be taking a nap right now. This is my nap time. So if I do doze off a little bit, I don't know, can you? Yeah, thank you. I'm from Laguna Niguel, California, which is South Orange County in the southern part of the state. I live with my husband of 41 years, and he's not 41, but we've been married 41 years. He was pretty cool at 41, now that he's not. And I live with my grown daughter and our 3 cats. I was originally diagnosed with early stage breast cancer in 1995 at age 42, and I was told it was slow growing, don't worry about it. You can do an extra thing by, getting chemo. You don't have to have a chemo, but, if you do, it'll just be, extra insurance. So I did the chemo, I did all that, and 3 years later, in 1998, I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer to my bones at age 45. So I've been living with it for a pretty long time. And what I want to talk about is my recent experience with mental health issues as it pertains to metastatic breast cancer treatment.
Great, thank you. Thank you all, and it's quite a panel, so I think I have my work cut out for me today, and now I know why they got the shrink to do this, so. So let's dive in with some questions. So actually, I'd like each of you to address this just very briefly regarding diagnosis. How many in the room are diagnosed within the last year with metastatic? Within the last year. Okay, so a good number of you. So could each of you address just briefly how you cope with the diagnosis and what's changed in your coping style over time?
I can tell you that the day that I was diagnosed, my coping strategy was 6 scotch and sodas.
Wow.
That's not necessarily something I'm
You're
proud
clapping?
of.
I mean,
I'm like, what's like, this is not an AA meeting.
I didn't know that was a approved treatment.
right.
I didn't. I can tell you that, you know, and which for me, I'm a social worker, and I've been a social worker 25 years. That is certainly not anything that I would have. I mean, that's something I would have been trying to work with somebody to not cope like that. You know, and since that time, I realized that, you know, the faith that I was raised with was really there for a reason. That, you know, there was things that were within my control and things that weren't in my control. And it was learning the balance of what I needed to give to God and let Him take care of, and what I can do on my own. And so it's been, you know, 3-4 years of really trying to figure that out and accept that. And I am a control freak. So it's been able to try to learn that coping mechanism of just accepting each day, and it's a fight every day. We built a house across the street from my parents because of my health, which was not the smartest thing I've ever done. We have a beautiful property, but I'm like ready to scream on any given moment when my 86-year-old father has my garbage cans that he's taken to the curb, and I'm like, I can still do things, you know. And so my coping is still trying to, there's a different, wherever you can't do this, I'm looking for I can do this, so.
Right. Okay.
For me, I just retired this past November. I served 21 years in the Army. And And in the Army, you're taught to push through. You're taught to keep going. And that was what I did. And I was really kind of in denial to myself because I didn't allow myself to feel any of it. I just kept pushing through it. But what I did do is I was smart enough to realize I could not do it on my own. So I did seek mental health counseling. And after being with my therapist about about almost a year and a half, I just went in her office one day and I just broke down crying. And my therapist was sitting there, she was laughing, and I'm like, I'm over here breaking down, what's wrong with you? And she said, it is about time.
Right.
She said, you have been so strong, you have been carrying this, and I was wondering when you were going to break down.
So you got real about it.
And at that point, yes, it got real.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you. Juanita?
Initially for me, like I said, it was a party in the hospital for 6 weeks. So it was like, I think my cancer was scared and confused because there was so much laughter and so much prayer going on in the room. So it was like, initially I was in a roller coaster that I had no control of everything because from 7 until 11 o'clock at night, people were in my room and it was, yay, and I loved it. I totally loved it. It's what I needed. It's how I thrive. So initially it was just, I'm just trying to keep the party going. And now, even though everybody is still there, in 2 years, I'm now on my 5th thing. And in 2 years, y'all know that's not too good, right? But I'm on my 5th thing, and it's a clinical trial. So now it's different now, because even though everybody is still there, I'm now leading this fight instead of being in the wave. So it's a little bit harder. I tell people I make a life and death decision every single day, because the first pill that I take in the morning is a cancer drug, not a pain drug, but a cancer drug. So every day I have to make a life and death decision. Do I take this or not?
Right, thank you. And Sandra, you've been
Yeah,
coping with this the longest.
Yeah,
so.
it's been a long time, but it's almost half of my married life that I've had metastatic breast cancer. But I went through a grieving process. The first thing I remember doing is just kind of screaming at my husband that, I didn't want to die. And then I found my daughter standing right by the door listening to all that. She was 15. And that wasn't that great. But I allowed myself to cry. I allowed myself to be upset. I allowed myself to, be mad at the cards that were dealt to me. And then I got busy into research. In 1998, research on the internet around metastatic breast cancer was so sparse. There was hardly anything on there. And everything was scary, completely scary. At the time, they said that 30% of those with metastatic breast cancer are dead within 2 years. Are alive after 2 years. And then 10% are alive after 5 years. But what I'd read in other places, it was, a death sentence. So I thought, I have a 10% chance to live in 5 years. And why can't that one be me? Why can't I take that chance and just be that person who lives through that? And so I did a lot through a lot of things with research. I got involved in breast cancer groups, and I do a lot. I actually sit on panels to discuss breast cancer research proposals with scientists side by side, with the DOD and with the Komen organization. And to me, what has kept me going is knowing that there's going to be something else out there for me to take, because I've had a lot of things. My body has gone through a lot in the last almost 19 years.
Yeah, and it's interesting hearing all of you answer that question, because the common thread that I think that goes through each of your answers is a shift in your mindset and a shift in how you're thinking about this disease. It's when you're first diagnosed, you all know that it's in your face, it's fear, it's terrifying. And what happens is you shift to a more empowered way of thinking about it. You find your power, you find that place where you have some power. And that's very, very helpful as you navigate through this illness. So it's great to hear all of you say something like that. So the next question I want to ask, I'd like Sandra, if you would, to answer first. What's easier than you expected about living with metastatic breast cancer, and what's harder?
What's easier is that I ended up with a pattern. When I was on certain treatments, I knew it was going to happen when I was originally diagnosed with breast cancer, after the chemotherapy and radiation, all that, it was kind of like you fall off a cliff and you have nothing else going, and you feel like you're kind of separated and you don't know what's going to happen. Actually, it was comforting to know that I was going to see my oncologist a lot, and that we had a plan, and that I would know, my oncologist would talk to me about what would happen when the current treatment isn't working anymore. So I would know that there was something out there. And to me, knowing that something is out there gives me a lot of confidence in that that I'm not at the end of my rope.
That's great. And Lana, will you answer that question also? What's easier than you expected, and what's harder than you expected?
Well, I'm going to start with what's harder than what I expected. And what's harder than what I expected is managing the side effects that come with the chemotherapy. I am on my 11th drug.
Wow.
And July 9th will mark my 4-year cancerversary. So 11 drugs in 4 years. So with those 11 drugs comes a urologist, a neurologist, a cardiologist, all these other specialty doctors because of the side effects. And I'm still trying to manage side effects of the chemotherapy drugs. What is easier than what I expected with this diagnosis was telling my children and watching my children go through it, because I spent so much time trying to protect them when they really didn't need the protection, because believe it or not, kids are resilient. So what my kids did was, we called chemo day game day, and they came up with a dance and a song. And that morning, before I went to chemo, we did our game day dance and song, and we high-fived, and they went to school, and I went and got in that chemo chair.
You know, thank you. It's so interesting to hear you say that story, because I was talking to one of the vendors earlier today who is not a breast cancer patient, and she said to me, you know, there was this woman who said she had game day with her children on her chemo day and dance day, and she was telling me your story because it touched her so much. So, Laurenita, will you also speak a little bit to how you manage side effects? What are your best tips and tricks about managing side effects?
Well, technically, actually, I want to take a nap right now. And you have no idea how hard it is for me to be awake right now, because I've been suffering from...
Try to stay with us.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm really trying. I've been suffering from fatigue a lot. One of the things that I do is I see a naturopath oncologist sometimes. And so if somebody tells me something, or you read that this medicine is going to cause a lot of diarrhea, well, I'm definitely going there to see, okay, what can I take? They look at what the medicine is, and it's like, oh, start a probiotic. And so I try to get in front of whatever side effects like that are. I do a lot of yoga. Yeah, those are my main two things.
Okay.
Those are my main two things.
Okay, great. Next question. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your relationships and how your relationships have been affected by your diagnosis and by your experience with the diagnosis. So what changes to your important relationships have you experienced, and what have you done about those changes? Jody, could you speak to that first?
Oh, of course, because I had to move across the street from my parents.
Right.
And that's been the most difficult. My mother's older sister was diagnosed and died from metastatic breast cancer when she was 46 years old. Mm-hmm. So my mother believes that she gave me this disease, and that's been the hardest. So trying to then manage that relationship has been very difficult, because they feel like they have to do everything for me now, and that's probably been the struggle mainly because of that. Because actually I was diagnosed at 46, the same time when my aunt died. I think I was about 9 or 10 when she passed away. And that's been the most difficult relationship. My other relationships have been very much a blessing, because I have had friends who I didn't realize were my friends, who are the ones who call me, and they drop by these weird little packages of how do you handle cancer, and it's a cute little wraps, and they do research about little things to warm your hands. And so friendships have actually, and people at my church have been the real strong suit for me, because my biological family has had they've just been devastated by the diagnosis. Even though I don't look sick, I don't look sick, I don't act sick, it's just, that's been the difficult time was with them.
Are you able to specifically ask these friends for something specific, or are they just kind of there and showing up and giving?
I am very bad at asking for help.
How many are bad at asking for help? Yeah, exactly.
That is something I have learned.
Mm-hmm.
There's one lady in particular who will call me and say, okay, here's what time I have this week. Now, which day am I taking you to the doctor, and which day am I doing this? And that's actually made it easier for me, having somebody who is just like, here's what I can do, pick one or pick two.
Yep.
I just can't say, would you do this for me? I can't do it. So people who will call and they know me. I had the hospital that I worked at assigned a social worker to me who was smaller than me, cute, little, and she'd come down and she'd be like, I don't care what you say. I'm going to take X number of your patients today. I'm going to do this. So you can either tell me what you want me to do or I'm just going to take it away from you and do it. And I'm like, I'm kind of scared of you. You just go ahead.
Sandra, could you talk a little bit about asking for help and where you're getting support from also?
Yeah, my first major treatment when I was diagnosed was in 1999, and I went through bone marrow transplant with stem cell rescue, and that was a clinical trial. And I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and I was in pretty bad shape during that time. And so I had to ask for help because at one point you move to an area where it's more like a little condo and it's not in the hospital itself. So when you're well enough, you can go over there, but you have to have somebody with you 24 hours a day. And so my sister ended up being the person that organized that, and she stepped up and said, I'll do that. Another thing that happened was I needed so many platelets, and because I was taking out platelets that had already been donated, I needed to replace those. So, yeah, that was what you had to do. So I asked a few people if they could help me with that and do the platelets. 42 people donated. People I didn't even know donated because they were friends of other people.
That's amazing.
So, to me, that just showed that people really want to help. A lot of times they don't know what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to help. So to give them something concrete, like one of my friends, I needed to get away from the house. I needed to get away from feeling like I'm a chemotherapy patient. So my friend picked me up and we went to the movies. And, asking those things and is something that I still have to work on, but it really makes a difference in my day-to-day outlook.
I could not agree with you more. I think that asking for help, people ask me all the time, what are the things I can do to make this experience easier for me? Learning to ask for help in concrete ways is one of the best things that you can learn to do. I know it's outside of your comfort zone. Women are not great at accepting help or great at giving help. But in our friendships, in our female friendships, I always say that is the milk of human kindness, those female friendships. Those friends really want to help and they don't know what to do. So when you give them something to do, you allow that kindness and love into your life. Lauren,
I just want to say something right quick. I truly believe that, not to toot my own horn, but I did have like a lot of visitors.
Yeah.
And I think
I can't imagine.
they told me I broke the hospital system in 2 weeks maybe I hadn't seen that many visitors, because I have a firm belief that we always need caregivers. You do not need a caregiver the day you're diagnosed. You needed a caregiver the day they pulled you out of your mama's womb and somebody slapped you on your bottom and they wrapped you up. That was your first caregiver. And you need a caregiver since. So I think the best way to get caregivers is to be a good caregiver. So when you walk down the street and you smile at somebody, you might be the only smile that somebody sees. So I just think if you live your life like that, it's like this big ball of energy and goodness, and it's a big ball and people want to attach to it, so when you need help, it's there. So on that level, I still don't understand this. I was diagnosed in October 2014. People who had cancer, people who have parents, whatever, children. At one point, everybody decided I shouldn't work. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So I haven't worked since then. And I'm starting to look for a job now because those funds are running dry. But literally, I have not had a need to work because everybody and I didn't ask for anything. And just one last thing, I'm single. So that's a whole different thing, too, when it comes to relationships. I have a wonderful family, wonderful friends, but I will admit, and there might be some people who are single with no children, that when you come to these conferences, I love to hear the stories and the dances and everything. It's extremely hard because I don't have that pull. And for the most part, people with kids, they talk about that pull. That's the thing that makes them fight more. So it's hard if you don't have that. It's very hard.
Yeah, that's, it's a good question for the people who are single. Two of you, I think, are single on this panel, right?
I'm
No?
double.
Oh, just one of you. So, you're what? What'd she say?
I'm double.
So, Laurenita, could you talk a little bit about being single and dating and the challenges?
Challenges. I was a dateaholic before cancer. I literally was a dateaholic. Ever since sophomore year, I did not have a week meant two dates for me. And it's not like that anymore. So in addition to like losing my hair and gaining so much weight, that is a part of me that I lost, and I don't understand it. And so it's very hard, because now I don't know, did anybody, I think it's a study that says that if you're a black woman and single and over 35, you have a better chance of being, it's either hit with a Mack truck or or in a terrorist attack. It's one of those two things than you do of being married. Well, I will say this, guys. The study was taken out of context.
Right.
The professor who did that study
Got hit by a Mack truck.
was my professor. He taught me statistics. So I know how it was wrong, but to have it that, he was my favorite professor in grad school. But it's a thing. So it's just very hard, because now I'm at an age where it's harder to find. Now it's a lot to take on. So it's hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Yeah. And Lana, you mentioned your children and talking with your children. I think this is such an important topic, and we do whole programs just on talking to children. Could you talk a little more about the specifics of how you spoke to your children? How old were they when you were diagnosed?
Okay, so that was almost 4 years ago. So my Olivia was 4.5, 5, and Ashton was about 8 or 9 years old. So initially, I didn't talk to them. I didn't bring it up. They just noticed that my hair was getting shorter, and we just didn't talk about it. And then finally, it just got to and I didn't talk about it actually to anybody. And then it just got to the point to where it was harder for me not to talk about it than it was for me to talk about it. So I finally just took that step and just said it. I have cancer, and this is what mommy's going through. And, for my son, he was good. My little girl cried her eyes out, but it's not because of what you think. My little girl cried her eyes out because I was bald. And she said, we were getting ready to go out somewhere one day, and she said, Mommy, are you going to put on the hat? And I said, no. And I said, well, why you want me to put on the hat? And she said, well, you don't have to. She said, don't worry. She says, because if somebody says something to you, I'll tell them you're a girl. So for her, it wasn't about the disease and me possibly dying. She was upset because I didn't have any hair, and she wanted people to know I was a girl.
Right.
So I thought, if that's as bad as it gets from my little girl, then I am good.
Yeah.
And that was as bad as it got for my little girl.
And Sandra, could you talk a little bit more about your adult children and how you speak to them even now about what's going on with you, how much you disclose, don't disclose?
Both my children want to know just about everything, but I don't necessarily tell them everything. I don't, my son lives about 30 minutes away from me, and my daughter, lives at home with us. She's a boomerang person. So she can see me and see what's going on. And when I'm having a bad day, I just talk to her about it and tell her what's going on. But what happened to me in January was pretty bad. About 4 years after I was originally diagnosed, I felt very sluggish. I felt like, it was too much to just wake up, and it was too much to brush my teeth, and, just doing these things was just like it was too much. It just felt overwhelming. So I talked to my oncologist about it, and she said, well, don't we have you on, an antidepressant? And I said, no. She goes, well, how come I didn't tell you about that? It's like, I don't know, I didn't tell you about it. So I ended up going on low-dose Prozac, and that worked for me until January of this year. And what happened was I went on Exempra at the end of October, and Exempra with Herceptin and Perjeta, that was very difficult for me. I ended up in the emergency room a number of times. I really thought that I needed a blood transfusion because I just felt like I wasn't getting better. Because normally with a taxane like Exempra, I knew that about 2 or 3 days afterwards, I'd start feeling kind of achy, and then that would happen for a couple days, and then I'd start feeling better. Well, I wasn't getting better. I was feeling worse over time. And it got to the point where I wouldn't even leave my bed. I was really, really stuck. And I remember sitting, looking out the window, thinking, I have, there's people out there, they're driving in cars. I can't even get myself in a car right now. Or they're walking their dogs. I just can't walk their dog. I couldn't walk my dog or anybody's dog at that point. And I felt like just rolling up into a little ball and going away. I felt that if I didn't wake up in the morning, that would be just fine. We went to the emergency room because my husband was convinced, and my daughter was with us. They were both convinced that I had some type of physical problem. It ended up not being a physical problem. It ended up being a mental problem. But I never knew that a mental issue could affect your body so hard. It was like at the bottom of the bottom. And so I went through therapy. I got some, a different antidepressant amount, and with that support and with the support of my son, because he'd gone through some depression early on, he'd ask me things like, okay, Mom, I know that you're not, feeling very well, so just text me after you've brushed your teeth. Text me after you've had, you've eaten breakfast. Text me that you've taken a shower. Because I needed those little things to get me going, because I felt like I'd lost that urge. And I felt like I was never going to get better. So I had to really force myself, because of my kids, my daughter and my son, they still needed me. Yep. And I thought, I've got to work hard on this.
Right.
And that's what I did.
Good. This is my opportunity to put in a plug for mental health treatment. I can't tell you how important it is. I know many of you see a therapist. Please don't be embarrassed. Don't think that there's anything weak about seeking counseling. What you're going through is really, really hard. And the physical stuff is most certainly tied up with the psychological stuff. The whole mind-body connection is real. So please don't hesitate to seek treatment if you need it. Let me go to Janine, and if there's any particular question.
So we have a couple of interesting questions here. One person is asking, how do you respond to people who tell you you don't look sick?
Before or after they get up off the floor?
I typically say, you know what, you're right. I don't look sick, and I'm blessed that I don't look like what I've been through. But let me tell you what I've been through. And then I tell them my story, or I tell them about the journey that I've been on. And then at the end of that, they're like, wow. And the thing is, like someone said earlier, you never know what a person is going through. And a person doesn't always look like what they're going through. And you never know, just a good morning or a smile or a hi or something could make that person's day.
Okay, I would like to ask the hard question now, and that's talking about legacy plans, end-of-life issues, and whether or not you have thought about when you may have to make a decision about ending treatment, and how will you know what to do. So let's talk about that, the ending, coming to a time where where you're thinking about making a decision about ending treatment. Jody, do you want to address that?
Because my family is a bunch of control freaks too, I already have all my plans written out. Because I want it my way. And my sister has embarrassing pictures of me as a child, and I don't want them there. You think I'm kidding? You should have seen the Walgreens, the Kroger's that will put a picture onto a cake for you on my surprise 50th birthday said that they would not do it because it was child pornography. Because that's the kind of picture she has of me. I'm not kidding. But for me, it's when there's more I can'ts than there are I cans. And one of the things that I wanted to do with my life was, I'm tired of cancer being the focus of everything. So I have become a collector of retired chihuahuas. So I have rescued, in the last year, I have rescued like 2 14-year-old chihuahuas, and then another one who has no teeth, and a blind Shih Tzu, and they are what keep me going. And so between my partner and I, it's kind of like when I'm to the point where I cannot care for them anymore, then we'll bring hospice in home.
Okay.
Because my thing is I want the dogs to know where I went.
Yeah.
And I have to be with them. And if you'd like to see a picture of the latest one, her name is Matilda, and I have it on my phone.
What I really like about what you're saying is that you have in your mind some specifics about that, so that it's comforting to have those specifics just in the back of your head. And they could change, but it helps a little bit, right? To just know when this happens, I need to maybe shift gears.
Because the other thing, I don't want it to be somebody else's decision. It's my decision.
Yes.
And I want to be prepared for that. I don't like anything open-ended.
Right.
And so my thing is to have it done. It's there if I need it. I hope I don't need it for 10, 15, 20, 30 years.
Right.
But my comfort is in that it's completed.
Exactly. And Sandra, could you speak to that briefly also?
Yeah, what I have done is read. I've read the book On Being Mortal and Living with the End in Mind, because I kind of want to know what's going to happen, because I'm going to die someday, whether it's going to be of breast cancer or whatever. So I just felt like I needed more information about that. And I went to a palliative care conference put on by American Society of Clinical Oncologists a couple of years ago, and got some ideas about things that I could do, because I really don't want to leave people hanging. And I don't like people picking up after me the messes that I've had. Like when I've moved offices, I've taken like every scrap of everything with me, so that no one has to do that and clean up after me. And I just after I was diagnosed, my mother and father went to a assisted living place. My aunt, who was 99 years old and lived in the same house since 1958, died, and we had to clean out, my two sisters and I, we had to clean up all their stuff. And I thought, I'm not leaving stuff like this for my kids to do, because I need to keep the things that are important to me, and the other stuff set aside or maybe donate. So we've done a lot of donating, and it's kind of cleansing to get rid of stuff, because most of the time this stuff doesn't even matter. You just, it's not that big a deal.
Right.
I do have 3 empty advance directives in my file. So I need to complete that, and I have not done that, and there is no good reason why I haven't done it.
Many people say that there's a real relief that comes with filling that out and just putting it away.
Yeah. End of life is hard for me because I'm 41, my kids are young, and it was a mental thing for me, because we're all going to leave here one day. whether it's by whatever. But it's just a little bit harder knowing that I wake up having to fight a little bit harder than the average person does. So it was a mental block for me. So once I got over that mental block, I took care of business. I bought my plot. I have a safe deposit box. I have a trust set up for my children. All the life insurance policies are in there. I've made all the decisions. That way, we don't have to make those decisions leading up to that time. I want to be able to make them now and get them out that way. That way, when that time comes, my family and I can just spend that time together without having to make those decisions.
Exactly. Laurenita, did you want to say something about that also?
Well, I'm single and I don't have a lot of stuff, so I was laughing because I had a friend who came to this conference with me last year, and we buy silly stuff, like stuff that we don't even like, about two of, and we share. And so our retirement plan was to sell all the stupid stuff, and we were going to live off of that. And she died day after Christmas, so I was just laughing like, she left me again. But this is the last stupid thing that I truly hate, and she had two of them, and she hated both of them. So she made me take one, so she's with me here at the conference today. But my thing is, I got a life insurance policy. I don't have a lot of stuff. My sisters know I don't want to linger in pain.
Yeah.
I know if I have to move to Houston towards the end, I want to get out of here soon. I'm a Christian. I don't want to overburden them. So we've talked about that a little bit. And my sister and I both have a plan that at about 7.5 minutes into the service for a full 30 seconds, I can't believe my sister is gone. So whoever goes first has to do that.
Has to do that?
I have two sisters. One is like, I don't want any part of you guys, but the other one.
That's very funny. Janine, do we have one more question?
Yes, so we have an attendee who's asking, what diversionary tactics do you all use to not fall into the depths of despair and fear around potential death?
Chihuahuas.
Toothless chihuahuas.
I go and I visit infusion centers, and I go and I sit and I talk to other patients, and that's what I do.
I'm sorry.
And I was going to say, actually, I do collect the Chihuahuas, but also I do collect blankets and toys and stuff, and I take them. I have a hard time going into the shelters. I tend to knock on the door and give them to them outside the door of the shelters. Because for me, it's something that's not cancer related, and I have always loved animals, and so to be able to take stuff to rescue dogs, toys, blankets, or whatever, to me, it's not cancer related. Then I'm not focusing on that word, and so that's what I do to have my entertainment.
I speak at conferences. I teach a lot of yoga. I hang out with friends. I don't watch television, so that means I have about at least 3 hours every night to catch up on the phone with people. So I put on that earpiece, and I'm having long conversations with friends. That's great. So that's just amazing. So I'm just keeping caught up with people.
And I also volunteer with animals, cats. I work every Saturday morning with my daughter taking care of cats at the animal shelter. It's a no-kill shelter, which makes me feel better about being there. And we've dealt with, cats that are blind and cats that are, missing legs and everything. And you know what? They just do what they need to do. They can find their way around. They can get over all that. And so, it kind of makes me think, well, if this blind cat can climb to the top of a cat tree by themselves without even knowing where they're going and not even know how high this tree is, I can probably do some other things too. So I do that, and I'm a helpline match volunteer for a couple of organizations. I do yoga, I read a lot, and I have a horrible Facebook addiction.
So the common thread that ran through that answer, the question was, how do you avoid the despair? That common thread, did you notice what that was? That was about finding meaning in your life that elevates you beyond cancer,
I mean,
right?
Come on, zoom in on that face. Come on, zoom in on Matilda. How do you not?
Oh, everybody now. Oh.
Come on. That's how you
But
find
I
it.
have cat videos.
Oh, God.
Help me, please. Someone.
Okay, so we are at about 10 of, so I just want to ask one last question that I'd like all of you to answer, and that question is, what is the most important thing you'd like to share about living fully with metastatic breast cancer?
I'll start with that one.
Okay.
You know, we really focus in on our cancer in our bodies. But when you think about how many square inches of your body has cancer in it, it's not very much. And we dwell on that little bit that we have, and we don't keep the rest of our body healthy because we're too busy, you know, looking at the parts that aren't working right. And so one of the things that that I'd like to get, you know, get understood is that in order for you to get treatment in the future, you need to be as healthy as you can right now. Because you don't know how many treatments you're going to have. You don't know what's going on in the future. But if the rest of your body isn't healthy, you may not be eligible for that next kind of treatment. So that's what I'd like you to go back with.
Very good advice. Laurenita?
I agree. I came into cancer with no comorbidities. I didn't have anything my dad died in August. My friend died the day after Christmas. I'm crying. I was in pain. I found out my cancer came back. And, you know, when I took my blood pressure, it was like 117 over 66. That's where it should be, right? So I don't have any comorbidities, so I just try to remain healthy while I'm going through this. And for me, it's just like laughter to me, prayer and laughter. And again, you just don't know that you might be the only sunshine that somebody gets that day. And I just want to offer that to people. And that's how I get through.
Thank you. Jody?
I, like my new buddy here, I will give cancer credit for nothing. However, I have found, you know, a different sense of joy in life because every moment has become precious. And so people will look at me and it's like, why are you smiling? I'm like, because I'm freaking still here. You know, and that's with anybody. I've had people say, well, anybody could walk out in the street and get hit by a bus, or if you're apparently a single African-American woman, it's a terrorist attack. You know, there's always some joy in the moment, and that's my thing.
Thank you.
I would say the one thing that everybody does forget about is your mental health. And your overall health includes your mental health. So that has to be healthy as well in order for you to be able to go and sit in that chair. The other thing is, what I like to remind people of, there is always something in life that's worth fighting for. And you find that one thing in life that's worth fighting for, and you hold on to it, and you fight like hell until you get out of it. And for me, that is my children. And as long as I keep swimming, I may not be backstroking, but as long as I'm treading water, I am still hanging on.
It's so, thank you. There's such hope and optimism in everything that's being said here today, and I really appreciate that. You know, a lot of cancer patients are told you have to stay optimistic. It's hard to stay optimistic all the time. It's kind of not possible, actually, to be optimistic all the time. And people get afraid that if I'm not optimistic all the time, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It means you're a human being and you're not going to be optimistic all the time. But to have these kind of driving mindsets that help people cope, help people get through. I read something the other day that a person was saying, there is illness in my life, but I am not illness. There is cancer in my life, but I am not cancer. And I really like that way of thinking about that particular mindset, because you're still a whole person with a whole life with all kinds of other interests and things that bring you meaning and beauty and things that are stressful and difficult. So I want you to see yourself as being so much more than just a cancer diagnosis. You are so much more. And don't ever let any doctor treat you like you're a cancer diagnosis either. I work with women every day on health challenges, mostly cancer, and I know that people have the ability to adapt to their circumstances. It's kind of the human condition, to be honest. We pretty organically adapt to our circumstances. And so for those of you who are new to this game, know that that adaptation is organic. You have to allow it to happen. But take care of every aspect of your life, your mental health, your physical health. I want to thank the ladies. You did a wonderful job, so optimistic and beautiful. So, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your time here, and good luck to everyone.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ginsburg. Thank you, panelists.